Hi everyone, and welcome back to Woman2Woman, where we're continuing our study of Max Lucado's Be Anxious for Nothing. And today we were looking at the scriptures from Philippians chapter 4, verses 4, 5, 6 and 7. And Paul writes that we are to be anxious for nothing. And as we discussed last week, there are millions of people living every day with this fearful condition, anxiety. The word anxiety actually comes from the Latin word which means to choke, to squeeze, and perhaps that's exactly how you feel, that you're being squeezed, the fear of tomorrow, the fear of the unknown, the what ifs that you spend time analysing. That may cause you to feel squeezed, that may cause you to feel that you can't breathe. Well, we are looking at the words written by Paul in the book of Philippians to help us to navigate safely through anxiety and overcome it. And Paul encourages us to be anxious for nothing, but instead rejoice in the Lord always. Wait a minute. I feel like I'm choking with anxiety, and he is telling us to rejoice in the Lord always. Now, I can understand rejoicing in the good times when it's my birthday or when we're at a party or when everything's going well, but rejoice when I'm feeling anxious, rejoice when I'm feeling worried. Well, when Paul wrote these words, he wasn't kicking back on a beach somewhere sipping cocktails. No, in fact, I don't read anywhere in the Bible where Paul did that. He was, in fact, in prison when he wrote this letter to the church in Philippi. He'd been beaten, he'd been whipped, he was hungry, he was in chains. You know, this guy went through so much shipwreck, bitten by a snake. Everything happened to this guy, and he was able to say, be anxious for nothing, instead rejoice in the Lord always. I think the Apostle Paul knew a thing or two about suffering from anxiety. So what was it that he grasped about it that we can learn from today? Well, is it possible to actually rejoice even when we're experiencing fear and panic and anxiety? Here's the thing. Maybe it's not about a feeling, but instead about a choice. We may feel fearful. We may experience anxiety. However, we can choose how to deal with it. We can decide where to direct our thoughts. We can choose to direct our thoughts onto that anxious feeling or that anxious situation that we're worried about, or we can choose to direct our thoughts onto a sovereign Lord, a sovereign God who is above all things and who is in control of all things. You know, despite Paul's circumstances, he chose to fix his thoughts on a God that he could trust, who was always in control, who was with him always and would never leave him. Max Lucado says if you want to change, if you want to change a habit or a thought process or navigate away and safely through anxiety, then you need to change what you believe. What are you believing in? Are you believing that there is fear and danger around every corner? Or are you believing that God is with you in your tomorrow? That God's never going to leave you? Are you believing that God is in control and that you can trust him? Or are you believing that your life is out of control and falling apart? It's not that we feel like rejoicing. Of course we don't when we're feeling anxious and down and when we're in chaotic situations. But we can choose, even in the storm, whether to rejoice and be thankful and direct our thoughts in God, or we can choose to allow the anxiety to cripple us and to defeat us. What are you believing in today? Being anxious for nothing is a choice. It's about remembering that God's with you. God's got you. Not only is he with you now, but he's in your tomorrow as well. That he is sovereign. He is in control. So rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice, because the Lord is with you and you can trust him with your life. And as you direct your thoughts to him, you are directing your anxiety away and allowing him to deal with your anxiety. So tune in next week for more. Until then, God bless.